Hello everyone, it is Caitlin, and today we are working on the very last of our 1850s doll under things, underskirts. Let's get started on our underskirts. So, she has her chemise, her drawers, her corset, under petticoat, and her corded petticoat. We're going to make 3 skirts that go over the corded petticoat. Now, she probably won't be wearing all 3 at one time, but I want some options. So we're going to do a tucked petticoat, one that has lace on the bottom, or white work, really, it's not lace, white work on the bottom, and another one that's going to be a fancy wool one that we're going to use some braiding on, just because, why not? So set her to the side. We're going to start with the tucked one. So the tucked one, I want, I made this a little narrower than it should have been. It should have been about 2 inches wider, I think, but mine is fairly narrow. I think for this particular skirt, I'm going to cut her first petticoat, which is the tucked one, 20 inches wide, actually 21, because I want a seam allowance. And I have decided I want 3 half-inch tucks, which are fairly large tucks. I could also go with 1/4 inch, which may work as well, but I'm going to go with 1/2 inch today. Tuck measurement is basically how long you want your tuck, and you multiply that by 3. Because there's the part underneath the tuck, and then there's the tuck sits on top. So to get an inch tuck, you really need 3 extra inches of fabric, because one's going to actually give you that inch, and the other 2 are going to be sitting on top. So for 1/2 inch tucks, I need to add 1.5 inches to every tuck I wish. So I have to add 4.5 tucks, or sorry, 4.5 inches, because I want 3 tucks. So that gives me a, I just measured from her hem, which is about, I measured from her hem, I added 1/2 inch, because I wanted it 1/2 inch longer. Actually, I really want 1 inch longer. We're going to cut it 15. 1 inch longer, 1/2 inch seam allowance for the top, 1 inch hem, turn under, and then the 4.5 inches added. So I'm going to cut it 15 inches long by the 21 inches wide. So I'm going to use white cotton for this. First step is we're going to stitch 3.5 inches unstitched at the top, so that we can actually get the petticoat over her head. So I'm going to sew from here to here, and probably fill that seam as well, just so it's not raw. Alright, sewn together at the back, hemmed to that inch. So I did 1/2 inch, then another 1/2 inch. So let's go ahead and put in tucks, which is probably the most difficult part, so I definitely want to get that on video. So I want this first tuck to be about 1/2 inch from the hem. So it's 1/2 inch plus the 1/2 inch that the tuck is going to sit under, so I need to put my first mark about 1 inch above this hem. It may look better with 1 inch between. So if you're doing different size tucks, basically just take however much you want between the hem and the tuck, and then add in your the size tuck you're doing, and that'll give you what you want. Now we're going to take our tuck size and double it. In my case, I'm doing 1/2 inch tuck, so I'm going to do 1 inch. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to match the 2 pins. Put one of them back, basically just folding the fabric. I'm going to sew on that folded line with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And there's our petticoat with our first tuck. So for all subsequent tucks, what we're going to do is take however much I want between the tuck, and then add, again, the tuck measurement, put another pin, put a pin, twice the amount of my tuck measurement, and that'll give me basically what I need. However, this time, instead of measuring from here, I'm going to measure from the hem still, because every time you do this, there's human error. You're going to be slightly off. There may be a slight curve. It's going to get worse and worse as you go up. So always measure from the hem so you have a baseline. So I'm going to measure from here. That is 1.5 inches. I want 1/2 inch of gap, and I have a 1/2 inch tuck. So I need to add 1 inch to my 1.5 inch measurement. So I need to measure up 2.5 inches on mine. In fact, an easier way to even do this, in fact, I'm going to change it over, is also add your, so basically your gap and then your tuck measurement twice. So I'm going to measure it to 3 inches. And I'll show you why I'm doing this in just a moment. So the gap plus 2 times of your tuck measurement. And again, we're going from the hem. So now all I have to do is fold it over where the pin is, and this is where I need to put the fold. So we're just going to take that and measure it that way, or put the pin that way. So it's less measuring, and I can do the exact same thing, which is just sew a 1/2 inch from my fold. So I'm going to finish this one, and then I have one more tuck to do, iron it all down, and then we'll talk about like the whole top part bit. Alright, tucks are done. I am putting in a gathering thread at the waistline. And ideally you'd do 2 of these. I'm lazy and I only do 1. But it does need to be done by hand, not by machine. Machine stitching is far too bulky for this, and it doesn't look right when it's done. Alright, so I have a waistband that's about 1.5 inches wide. I marked it in the middle like I marked the skirt itself. Match those. I added about 1.5 inches ease to my waistband. That way there's overlap for the buttonhole, and also not super tight on her waist. Alright, now I can just pull the gathering thread until it matches. Evenly distribute those gathers and pin it more securely. Alrighty, so I'm going to stitch that down, and then I think that's all going to be all for this one right now. We're going to get all the petticoats to this point, and then I'll do the waistband and the buttonhole all at the same time. Alright, so here's the next petticoat. I cut it 25 inches by 10 inches, so it's shorter than the other because we're not putting the tucks. Also, we have some white work to put on there. So I did up the center back seam, left a gap, just like I did the other one. And now we're going to attach this to the bottom. I had about 25 inches, so I just cut it down to 25 inches and then put in a seam. So it should match the petticoat exactly. White works weren't usually gathered. If they were gathered very little. So we're just going to set this one plainly. It also means I don't have to run a gathering thread, so that's ideal. I'm going to run that seam, probably fell it as well, just so there's no raw edges. And this is the fast one, then we get to do the gathering thread again. Just put in, gathering threads put in was put in a waistband. So I marked the center fronts on both of them as we did before. Alright. Pulling on that gathering thread as I find it. Alright. Evenly distribute all those gathers, more or less. Right, I'm going to stitch this in, and then our next petticoat, I'm going to cut it out of blue wool because it's going to be a fancy like underskirt. Because I think every doll needs one of those. So I'm going to cut it out of blue wool, go ahead and seam up the sides. I'm going to cut it, how long is this petticoat? About 10 inches. So I want it to be about 11 inches. Let me see what it's going to sit on her. No, not 11 inches. Okay, 10.5 inches. Well, yeah, 10.5 inches finished, which if I want an inch hem, it's 10.5. Go to 12. We'll cut it 12 inches by 27 inches. And I'll go ahead and hem that and seam up the side, or seam up the sides, then hem it. And that way most of the filming part will be about the trim work, which is going to be the more interesting part anyway, especially since this is the third time putting this together, and I think we've gotten the footage of this. So no reason to waste any time. That was not evenly distributed. There we go. So instead of wasting any more time, we'll just go straight to the fun part, which is the trim work. Alright, so here's the trim work I've decided on doing. I couldn't really do anything super intricate because it's doll and it's a much smaller scale. So I have this 1/8 inch soutache braid that I'm using, and I'm basically just guesstimating this. I'm not measuring. Basically, just put it on and I'm making a little loop. Matching kind of the size loop to the last one I did. That. Putting a pin in it. I think I'm going to sew this on my machine. I haven't decided which would be easier. I'm going to try it by machine. If it gets too difficult, then we'll stitch it by hand. That works. But I really like the blue and the red. And that's just basically what I'm doing. And I'll probably cut this down to right here and just match them. Afterwards, I can put on the waistband and basically be done. Well, hooks and not hooks and eyes, button, butthole, all the other fun things that we're doing. Alright, so the braiding looks worse than it did because the machine likes to pull and grab things, and I didn't feel like fixing it, so it is what it is. But I'm working on the waistband on all the petticoats, which is just making sure to hide all the raw edges. Alright, let's do button. I'm going to go ahead and use blue thread for because it's what I'm going to be using for the buttonhole in a second. Which I'm probably not going to film because I hate buttonholes and I don't want to do that on camera. But yeah, it's just the buttonhole and we're done with all 3 underskirts. And next month we get to start dresses. Let's put some petticoats on her. Underskirts. So, let's start with the tucked one. I don't know if I make her wear all 5 of them at once, or if I'm going to like only do 2 of these upper ones. Find out in a second. I should really rather like that fullness on her. all the way around. Oops. Let's see what it looks like with all of them before I just say, no, we're not going to do all of them. Be careful with this arm because sometimes it likes to pop out. Thinking about it. Yep, there it goes. It's so hard to get it back in. Alrighty. Oh, that's a very nice one. I really like that skirt width. I think that looks really nice on her. Alright, so back in the tucked one. Put the wool one over top. And it's always good to have options. So more than one top petticoat option is always good. Here's the back of it. All nice and pretty. And there's the front. Nice and full. I actually really like that width for a skirt as well. Maybe slightly more. So I think this one was what, 28? I might try a 30-inch skirt when we cut her skirts. But yeah, that's underskirts. So we are done with underpinnings. We get to now work on dresses, which is fun. So, thank you so much for joining me this month as we worked on our doll under things, the last of our doll under things. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and as always, I will see you back here on Monday.